Hello, my name is Kåre Nørgaard, and I'm going to show you the value of the global medication database from a US perspective, where we have combined Danish and US data a lot, and a few other countries, mainly in Europe. With all this, I will go through first the data and the PowerPoint that supports it to explain what kind of data we have and give you an impression of the value of that data and the comprehensiveness of that data. And finally, I will use a web tool, our drug GPS web application, which you can access freely and which has US medication. And I'll show using that what is the value of having all that data and how can we prevent a lot of medication errors and thereby enable people to avoid them and to have safe prescriptions at the doctor whenever they have a drug prescribed. So first of all, let's take the PowerPoint. I'm going to show the value of the medication database, and what it means is that we have a database containing the 1500 active substances. I want you to look at the bottom of this picture. 1500 active substances, one of which is paracetamol, and in the US it is known as acetaminophen. And the strength of it all is the fact that we can decompose any medication in any country into these 1500 active substances. So if we take the US database containing 19,900 products in the so-called Orange Book, and they all have NDC codes, etc., they all can be boiled down to roughly a bit more than 1500 active substances, and so can the Danish 7,600 products, and the French and the Spanish 12,000 products. They are all built on the same 1500 active substances. So for instance, if you take a painkiller like Tylenol, it doesn't exist in any of the other European countries, but what does exist is paracetamol or acetaminophen, and then you can find the equivalent products. So in Denmark it would be Panodil. Only the strength makes a difference. I think it is 650 milligrams in the US and 500 milligrams only in Denmark. Using that global database, you can do a lot. So what I'm going to show you in a moment is that we have built a generic database on a generic structure. With this slide, I show you the generic structure with the example of warfarin sodium. So if you look at the bottom right, it says warfarin sodium, and that is the active substance. It is part of the warfarin group. In Denmark, it's sold in the product called Maravan, but it comes in different products in the US and in Denmark, not in 19,000 products, but that's the total. Twice that amount is the amount of packages, so above double the amount, so about 40,000 products or 42,000 products would exist on a pharmacy that has all products on their shelves, because they come in different amounts in packages. Now let's look at some examples of the data, and I would like to go through this front end, but it has a lot of tables. I think more than 300 tables underneath. Let's look at the to get an impression of the data. Let's look at this group, tramadol, just as an example. It's one of the 1500 active substances. If you copy that, then you will find that the equivalent products containing this substance we can derive from here. Initially we see first the Danish products containing this active substance, and then the American products, and we noticed that a product called Ultra Set in the US contains tramadol. I think it is the 37.5 milligram bit that is tramadol. And likewise, we could look at the substance group called paracetamol, I know in the US it's called acetaminophen, but it contains only one product called paracetamol, and it fills out the full group. One active substance, sorry, called paracetamol or acetaminophen. So what I can do is I can copy that number, and then I can ask what packages would be in that group, or contain a drug from, or an active substance in that group. And as you saw before, Panodil is known in Denmark as one of the top sellers of painkillers. And if we scroll down, we'll find a lot of acetaminophen named products, because in the US paracetamol is called acetaminophen. And ultimately we can find Ultracet again, because it contains also acetaminophen or paracetamol. If you want to go by FDA products, I have highlighted Ultracet as an example, and you can actually use the database to just copy the NDC code, which I've done now, and then I can ask what details I get from that code. So what you see now is that code is looked up in the database, in the US part of the database, saying, okay, it's Ultracet he's talking about. That's a combination product, and that's why 2 rows occur. And in the product list, it doesn't say for combination products, and that is typical for many countries, what the amounts are of each ingredient or active substance. But we have recorded them from the Yellow Book, or Orange Book, sorry, FDA's secondary publication. We know that these are the combinations, and I'll spare you the details, but we know that the 37.5 milligrams are tramadol, and 325 milligrams are paracetamol. Paracetamol has an RX code of 161, and an RX in the RX hierarchy is called acetaminophen. That's because that's what in the US normally is used instead of paracetamol, and it is in the group that we call paracetamol. One of the things to notice, we can take Tylenol as well, just to show you that because this is a combination product, it doesn't carry the amounts. If you take paracetamol instead, or Tylenol, let's take the drug Tylenol. Tylenol, it comes here. So if we take, for instance, this one, and ask for it to be analyzed, excuse me, get details, and we ask for Tylenol 8 hour, then only 1 row occurs, which is because it has only one ingredient. And there you can see that when it has only one ingredient, we know in the product listing that it has 650 milligrams of acetaminophen. That is also listed in the Orange Book, and that's why we know that it contains that product per unit, which is a tablet or a pill, contains 650 milligrams of paracetamol, which carries the code 161. Acetaminophen in RX norm is part of the group paracetamol. I'm just looking in my notes to make sure that I cover everything. I think I am. So I hope that from this you get a fraction of what this database does. It has a lot of tables, 300 and so. So you can really convince yourself that this was only a snapshot, and it was very much aimed at getting between the US and Denmark, in order to show you that we can do the same thing in both countries. Actually, we can do the same thing in all countries, and this is what I would like to show you now, because having this structure underneath it all, excuse me, we can go from for example, acetaminophen, saying that, or paracetamol, saying this is part of the substance group called paracetamol, and then we can go up and find out which classes paracetamol is a part of and which superclasses it's part of. And Tylenol, decomposed into paracetamol, is part of the painkiller class. And the good thing and the unique thing about what we do is we have a lot of business logic on these classes. So we can tell you if you are overdosed, for instance, from painkillers or anticoagulants or other drug classes. And this is what typically people cannot do. Because what we have done is we have built an application based on the 1500 active substances. So this application works in any country of the world. And I will show it with the US example now. And you have to bear in mind that it was built with Danish data, but we have globalized all those data by the use of RxNorm, which is a US ontology, by the way. In order to prepare that, maybe I should just get those shown so we can keep them in view. I have chosen to start in the middle of our drug GPS application. And if you want the full story, then search for drug GPS on YouTube and you will find it. It's a similar example. So I've chosen to start just to show you that here is a patient, or me, or you, or whatever we call him or her, who is taking Zocor in this amount, 1 per day, atorvastatin, 1 per day, no, 1 morning and 1 evening, so that's 2 per day, Tylenol 1 4 times per day, Advil 2 in the evening, and enalapril, which is for blood pressure, once in the morning, and furthermore a sixth one that we won't mention here. So you might notice that that this patient, if you know Zocor, it contains simvastatin. So this is the same kind of drug as atorvastatin. So we should detect that you take 2 drugs in the same class, as well as 2 in the same superclass. Tylenol and Advil are different types of painkillers. We can see that if we go to this step in the flow. Actually, the reason I'm going back is that we know this already before you specify the amounts. And early on we specified what kind of drugs we take, not only the amounts, but we'll come back to the amounts later. And there you can see that simvastatin and atorvastatin are both in the statin class. So it flags that you take 2 statins, just for your information, you might be aware. And then it flags that you take 2 in the same risk drug classes or superclasses, one of which is called painkiller and NSAID, and you take acetaminophen and ibuprofen, which is contained in Tylenol and in Advil. All right, just so you know. Then it analyzes the direct interactions. It currently looks up in the Danish interaction database, but any database that has RxNorm as a key or has any of the keys that we recognize, for instance, a US database, because we can look up the NDC key as well, that would be possible to call that. But currently we call the Danish database. So you see Danish interaction data, but you see US product names. So the US product name ketoconazole and Zocor. In the Danish database, where we have broken it down into ketoconazole and simvastatin, we find out, and you see that on the package insert and probably in any database, that you have to avoid that combination because azole and statins shouldn't be combined. So it's an avoid interaction. You should actually discontinue one of the two drugs altogether. And then enalapril, malate, and hydrochlorothiazide, which you take for your blood pressure, the hydrochlorothiazide part of it, and ibuprofen, which is contained in your Advil, flags certain precautions. This we find out in the Danish database because we can break down the US product into substitutes or into the 1500 active substances. Furthermore, the whole engine behind this is the fact that we have broken them down in active substances. So I'll just take the opportunity to show you what we have done here. And this is global, so I should point at the globe here instead of a particular flag. It has a bit of load time. Sorry, we'll do away with this as soon as we get funded, because we have drop downs that are quite heavy. So on certain pages we have long load times. But we see that we get 2,600 milligrams of acetaminophen. We get 400 per day with that amount that we've specified, one pill 4 times a day. So it would be 650 milligrams per time and 4 times per day. Adds up to 2,600. And we take this pill 400 milligrams per day, simvastatin 40 milligrams per day, enalapril 5 milligrams per day, hydrochlorothiazide 12.5 milligrams a day. That's because we take one pill per day containing 5 milligrams of this and 12.5 milligrams of this. We take atorvastatin 40 milligrams per day and ketoconazole, which we haven't shown because it was on a separate page, but we take that in the amount of 2 milligrams per day. That's just for your information. Now, risk drugs, because the interesting analysis is to find out whether you actually get too much of anything, besides the fact that we have found an interaction that you should discontinue. Acetaminophen has a separate calculation. So certain drugs have separate calculations based on the weight that we have supplied, not shown here, but previously we supply some personal data and including the weight, and including whether you are healthy, and including a lot of other stuff. And we use that here to calculate the maximum amount of acetaminophen, and it's 3,800 milligrams. That if you're a healthy person. Otherwise it's half. And okay, so we can go through the risk drugs and say, okay, ibuprofen is an NSAID, which in a converted equivalent dose means you get 16.68 milligrams, whereas the threshold or the maximum is 75. So it's okay for NSAID. Now we turn to the painkillers. Acetaminophen, you get 2,600 milligrams, which is less than the 3.8, by the way. The 3.8 comes close to a usual limit of 4. So no, in your case it's actually 3.8, but so we should have put it here. But it actually uses 4 because that's the conventional logic you can do with 4 grams of painkiller in total. So the 2.6 is below that. Ibuprofen converted to equivalent dose of acetaminophen is a 2 milligram dose. It's actually 5, but it's less strong. So the equivalent dose is 2, and the maximum is 4. And then you might say, hey, 2 here and 2.6 here, that's more than 4. Guess you're right. Threshold 1 passed is in painkiller. So we actually find out that the maximum is 4, and we flag those that have been passed, and the painkillers have been passed at 4.6. So this is reported as something that has been passed. And all of this is brought together in a report, and this you can see together with a lot of other information in a video targeted on drug GPS. But this is just to show you that that from the fact that we can get the active substances out of the drugs for any country, then we can make a global logic, which you just saw, which is country agnostic, and in any country would be able to detect if you have problems. So I hope thereby that you have seen the value of not only basing on the US, and in fact not only Denmark. You can make a global database of all drugs, and if you do so, you can also make a global application, and I think that that kind of application is going to be immensely popular. So I hope you have enjoyed it very much, and see you soon. Bye bye.